exactly where I belong. I'd fit exactly where I belong. Exactly where I'd fit exactly where I belong.
Check. Hey everyone, how's it going? Nice to see all of you again. It's Claire. We are back for another episode of 343 TV on Monday, which is tips and tricks with me. So hi, thanks everyone for tuning in. Let's go ahead and say hi to a couple of people in the chat. Hopefully, if people in the chat are here, and yeah, we got a couple of folks. So hi to Andrew, hey to Jonathan as well, hey to Samuel. Jonathan, has the timing changed? The timing has not changed, but if you are not in a place that's like the United States or in North America, so depending on where you are in the world, it may have changed for you because we recently went into daylight savings time. So the timing is still the same. It's still 1 p.m. where I am, but maybe it's a different time for you. Hi also to Todd. Hi to Tyra. Nice to see you. Yeah, so we're back again, and today we're doing some live performance stuff, which I'm very excited about because, as you know, I love doing performance-based stuff. Enigmatic Onion, hello! Nice to see you again, too. But also, as usual, everyone, as we do on every Monday, we have a giveaway. And today's, or not today, well, kind of today, but this week's giveaway, rather, is an Arturia Analog Lab 4 license. So, if you would like to get one of those, please enter the giveaway. I think Thomas from 343 Labs, if Thomas is here, maybe he will be able to help us out by putting the link in the chat. Also, my camera is a little bit slow today. Tech's not so much on my side today, but hopefully things will be okay. If anything does get a little too delayed, maybe I'll switch over to a different camera. But hopefully things will look okay, and we'll be able to do a little bit of push stuff, but mostly stuff still in live, so not too much hardware, although I will talk about some philosophies for live performance and so on. But yeah, giveaway that we've got today, please enter it. We want you to win. We want you to get things. I know a couple of folks in the chat have already won things, so that's always a good start. And yeah, also, if anyone does have questions, because today the theme of today's show, or today's stream rather, is about building a live performance. So if I will cover things, of course, but if you do have questions, please leave them in the chat on YouTube. I'd be happy to address them, and I'll probably ask the chat for a couple of other suggestions as well for like building a live performance and stuff like that. But we're also going to work with a live set that I've kind of already prepped and I've used in a different workshop and a different live performance setting as well. So we will be using this as an example, but think of this kind of like maybe as a semi call-in type of show. So if you have any questions directly for me or like my live performance approach, feel free to put them in the chat. Enigmatic Onion, how do we enter the giveaway? Yeah, so as with all our previous giveaways, usually Thomas, who runs our 343 Labs YouTube channel, will put a link in the chat. So I'm not sure if Thomas is around yet, but if you are Thomas, if you could put a link in the chat for the giveaway, that would be amazing. Otherwise, everyone, you can also head over to 343labs.com, which is our website, and there should be a place to enter the giveaway there as well. If you don't see the link now, you will hopefully see it at least by the end of the chat. But it's very exciting. If anyone has tuned into our previous streams before, which some people have, you will know that we have a very lovely relationship with Arturia, and they've been very kind in giving us quite a few things to give away. For example, the license for Pigments, which is another of their products. And Analog Lab 4 is amazing too. I personally use Analog Lab 4 as well, and it is very cool. It's got lots of really wonderful synth sounds that emulate a lot of analog stuff, so hence the name Analog Lab 4. So hopefully there will be more info about that shortly. Max, hello, hi, it is our co-founder Max, all the way from Berlin. Thanks for tuning in, Max. And yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to put some info in the chat later. Long time no see, Max. Max and I just had a meeting this morning, everyone. But no, we're very excited to share, to keep working on things to share with the community. So yeah, thanks everyone for being here as usual. We're gonna start on some live performance stuff. So quick reminder, if you have questions, please leave them in the chat. This is kind of like a call-in-ish type of show. And actually tomorrow there's also a call-in show. Our dear friend TAETRO, who runs a lot of the creative stuff for 343 Labs, is also going to be doing a call-in show. But in the meantime, I'm here with a live set open. I've prepped a couple of things that I was just thinking about different kinds of ideas. So what I'm going to do is play this through. A couple of you have heard of this before because I did used this particular live set at one of my other workshops that I did involving live performance using live. So we're going to just play through a couple of scenes. If you're able to see my screen, which you can see on the YouTube screen, you'll be able to see how I've organized things and labeled a couple of things. So keep those in mind as we go ahead and do this. But you know what? Let's see if we can get started. Maybe we'll just start off also with some effects. So let's start off. Woo! There's also a lot of noise because of my mic, but that's okay. We keep moving forward. Yeah, cool. So yeah, that's that's kind of it. That was like a short live performance of stuff. Like, how do we actually do that? Cool. So got a couple of questions in. Okay, cool, great. So I'll start with the bad stuff, not bad stuff, but the troubleshooting stuff. Samuel, the audio's kind of clipping for you. Probably check something on your end because it's not clipping for everyone else. So yeah, audio's kind of clipping for you. Probably want to check your settings, maybe your, I don't know, your speakers or something like that. And let's see. Todd, how much RAM do you recommend with Mac? That's a great question. So usually for Mac computers, I'm on a Mac as well, which is what I'm using now. And I'll speak a bit more about this later. I'll answer those questions. I have like 16 gigs and it works pretty all right for me. I would say maximize as much as you can or as much as your budget allows you to. But I think 16 is pretty good. And it's not too much of an insane price jump. So I have 16 gigs. That said, something else that folks forget about also when, as far as like talking about computer specs go, is that it's important to also have empty space on your hard drive. So for example, I have a fairly large hard drive and I do believe I have at least, I think I have about 25% of it free. That keeps it up and free and happy. If you have very little hard drive space, if you have like, I don't know, maybe less than 10% free, you might want to clear some stuff out of it too. For some of the performance setups that I've done with other clients, for example, we just have like a dedicated laptop for live performances, in which case there's pretty much nothing on the laptop other than the live set. And then you end up getting pretty good reliability with that, just because there's nothing else clogging up the system or working on the system too. And because of that, because it's a dedicated live performance computer, we can also do things like turn off Wi-Fi. That also helps a little bit with CPU stuff. It also prevents weird connections from being made in the middle of a live performance, especially if you're in, like, for example, a festival situation or a public space. So that's something to think about as well. Rio, hi. How to find our best character and our best setup in electronic music. Experiment, practice. There's only so much that I can tell people as an educator or even as an artist sharing stuff, although obviously now I'm more in like an educator type of mindset. But yeah, there's only so much that someone can tell you if you don't practice it and if you just keep asking questions without actually trying anything on your own. Because I've noticed you've been asking a lot of questions over time, Rio. So if you're trying things and if you're figuring things out on your own, then that's good. If you're just asking questions and trying to get people to spoon feed you, that's like one of the worst ways to improve. So, and that may sound harsh, but that's the reality. That's how I learned a lot of my stuff too, just by going out into the field, doing stuff, making mistakes, falling flat on my face, and picking myself back up again and going for it. So that's a great question. Not Grauman, hi! This is very nice. I can never get this organized. So actually, that's a great point. Maybe this would be a good part to talk about, just set organization. So I've got things set up on Push over here, but more importantly, or most importantly, check out what's going on in my live set. Everything that I've got on Push here is showing up in my live set. So it's pretty much like a mirror of exactly what I have in live in session view. And I think one of the best parts about building a live performance is making sure that you're organized. If anything, that's like the 101. The 101 thing, be organized. And I feel like that's something that we often forget or that we overlook, just because in a lot of live performance design or live experience design, we often ask ourselves the questions of like, how can we make this visually engaging? How can we make this exciting for people to experience? Hence live experience design, which is what I do. But we forget, like, a part of it is just setting yourself up and preparing yourself for success. If you are not setting yourself up for success, that's like half the battle lost. So what I like to think of a lot is just developing some system of organization. And for me personally, I've already had one going for a lot of production work and a lot of general workflow in live. So for me, I think of, for example, each of my sounds as being categorized in a certain way, depending on whether it's, say, they're the types of samples or the types of synths that are on it, and then correlating that to a color. So for me, whenever I think about percussion sounds or drum sounds, I generally think of warm colors like orange, red, browns. So generally, I always have my drums in orange or brown or some shade or variation thereof. Same thing with like percussion, like the tambourine. So you see over here, drums are in this orangey brown shade, tambourines in this lighter orange shade as well. Bass for me is usually blue. And because of this, it also is pretty easy to see on Push. So that's also something I consider too. I think about the different ways that colors show up on Push. I've also got this Rhodes track that's keys, and I usually think of keys being a little bit bluish or purplish. So again, that same color too. Plucks or synth stuff is usually also purple for me. Same thing with any kinds of pads, especially things that I might be doing live. That usually becomes like pinkish or purplish in my head. It's not synesthesia. Someone asked me about this before. It's not. It's just an organized color coding system, and the vibe that I get from like hearing something. Arpeggiators and any kinds of high synth sounds are also in some shade of pink, and the same thing for anything that's mallet. So in this case, the mallet's playing the melody. I do believe it's here. Yeah. Cool. So that's our mallet friends. And based off of this system, I stay true to the system pretty much across all sets that I do. So now I've developed like my own workflow for being able to organize information. And here's something to consider. I generally also consider when I'm building a live performance what controller that I'm using. So a lot of the way that I've set up this particular live set is pretty specific to Push. For example, you might notice that over here inside Ableton Live, I've got this red box over this grid of clips, and it's exactly 8x8. It's an 8x8 grid, and that's because when I built this live set, I was very conscious of the fact that Push itself is 8x8 pads. The same thing kind of applies to a Launchpad or a Launchpad Mini. It's like you're considering the controller in order to help yourself build an even better system. And that's why, for a lot of my color coding stuff, I generally avoid something that's very similar to a certain shade of pink and a certain shade of green, because when you are on push, and if you are playing things live, or if you're programming things in live, sometimes the LEDs on push, the pads, will automatically turn a shade of green or a shade of pink to either indicate that it's playing back if it's green, or if it's recording in overdub mode, if it's a pinkish red. So that's why generally for color coding, I avoid those things. And again, that's something that's going to be different on a different controller, right? Because you'll always have some kind of a different visual representation on your LEDs. So you want to be conscious of that. Like the shades, the colors and shades on a Launchpad are very different, and even between different versions of the Launchpad, like the Mark III versus earlier versions like the S. Very different color coding schemes too. Not as many colors or different variations and nuances to the LED shades. So that's something you want to be aware of too. Consider the controller. And as far as LEDs go, if I were using maybe an MPK Mini, I wouldn't even think about LEDs. It would just be like, whatever I can do with the keyboard or the existing knobs that I have, assignable knobs, assignable pads, those things. So I wouldn't really even think about shades of colors then. But I still might though, because whenever I look into my Ableton Live set, I still want to be able to have that visual organization. So being able to do that would be awesome. And let's see, other questions. Did we get something? Max, I feel like this could totally use some sax. So Max, if you want to record some sax and send it over to me, I will put it in. But yeah, so that's actually something that I think a lot about too. But I think about this, not just organizing tracks by naming them and coloring them, but also in a linear sort of order. So usually I tend to have drums all the way to the left, and then I'll have bass, chords, and melody from left to right in that order. So drums, bass, chords, melody. And for melodic stuff, if I have vocals, that goes all the way to the right, or any kind of live input. So if I'm playing my flute, that's also going to go all the way to the right. And those actually usually tend to be either a dark or a bright shade of green that is not the same as the playback green on push, or that's a little bit differently colored. And that's just a little bit of my general color coding too. If anyone's ever seen other production breakdowns that I've done, you will notice that it's pretty much the same coloring scheme. So because of that, I can find things pretty easily. So let's see, what else did we have over here? Yeah, Todd, you're most welcome. Rio, do you prefer DJ sets or live PA sets? I do both. So I focus a lot on live electronic sets. So it's not a DJ set, and it's also not a straight up like PA set per se. That's like, just plugged in, but anything that's live electronic. So involving things like looping, playing back of samples, triggering things, doing effects processing. If you think about my last 3 streams, like those 3 big techniques are what I usually do in a lot of my live electronic performances. You wouldn't necessarily get that in a DJ setup, although if I do a DJ setup, usually it's involving either live or Serato to be able to facilitate that. And that's because Serato has capabilities for Ableton Link, which maybe I'll speak a bit about later too. So there's that. Not Grauman, truth be told, I use Session to build the framework that eventually migrates over into arrangement. Yeah, not Grauman. Most people do that, so it's that's it. That is a way that Session View is used. So there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people do that, and I do it as well. Like when I'm figuring out some kind of arrangement, which also speaks to my next point about organization too. We're not just organizing things from left to right. In this vertical way, but also a horizontal way, right? So the great part about being able to do this in Session View is that I can rename scenes. So that's what I've done over here. I've called things like intro, verse, pre-chorus, 2 bars, which is a transition that I used. And I've got chorus 1, chorus 2. I've got some kind of switch between a 4 on the floor pattern and I think a breakbeat style pattern. So 4 on the floor, breakbeat. So I've got those things also, and then a halftime-y thing, which is halftime breakbeat. Cool. So all of those things. And yeah, just making sure that I'm organized. If I didn't have these scene names, I probably wouldn't be super clear about exactly what was happening over here. And again, considering the controller, everything fits in like an 8x8 grid. But the great part about Push and a lot of controllers that have remote scripts, so things like the APC40 or the APC key, Launchpad also does, is that you do have the ability to move in sets of 8 tracks too, or pages or banks, different ways to refer to the same thing, but you could move in groups of 8 tracks. So you don't have to just scroll left and right between tracks. You can move in groups of 8. Yeah. Or several different kinds of ways to move up and down also, if you want that. So yeah, that's not grammar. Back to your thing. That I absolutely use that too. And then I also end up using Session View for live performance. And people forget about this, but I've mentioned this again in many of my streams. So apologies for anyone who's heard me be pedantic like 100 times over. But live was first created for live performance. So arrangement view wasn't really a thing. It was really much just very much being able to manipulate things in real time, perform in a non-linear type of fashion. And that's why Session View is the first view that you open when you open a default live set. And people forget, again, that live is called Ableton Live, is the full name of the software. Live is the short name of the software. Ableton is the company. So terminology, good stuff. JR, hi. Nice to see you. Thanks for popping by. And thank you, Thomas, for putting the info into the chat. That is where you enter the giveaway, everyone. So please enter the giveaway. And yeah, let's go ahead and keep moving forward. I know there are a couple of questions, but I did want to make sure I covered everything. So we talked about organization. We talked about preparation and how important that is. Something else I like to consider when building a live set is energy. And that also relates a little bit to how you organize things in scenes or different layers in Session View. One thing that you'll notice is that even if I didn't, name my scenes as like intro, verse, pre-chorus, what I usually try to do is organize different clips with different levels of energy. So the most energetic clips, scenes, for example, would have the most number of clips in them, probably, and will also probably have clips that are more exciting. What do I mean by more exciting? That's more of a programming, a MIDI programming or audio programming type of thing. And that means different levels of energy through the use of different sounds and through the use of different rhythms. So for example, in this first clip, it's a kick drum. It's not bad. And actually a lot of people love kick drums. I love kick drums too. Whenever I hear a kick, I'm like, yeah, that's energetic. Cool. But later on, in the same track, what else do I have? Right, so I have a clip that's it has a lot more things going on. And it has things like hi-hats, things like claps. It's not just that kick. So correspondingly, in the same scene, I try to have different kinds of elements that also match that energy level. So for example, in the very first scene, you can see over here in my intro, I only have 2 clips. I only have the drums and I only have the Rhodes. So that is the lowest level of energy for me. It's like level 1. Cool. Next level of energy, still 2 clips, but this time the clips have more things going on. What's going on here? We've got a kick and a clap. How about the Rhodes? I think it stays the same. Yeah. The Rhodes stays the same. But the clap, because it's a bit of a higher frequency and it's adding a backbeat, we've got some additional changes in energy. Then moving on, next scene, adding in some bass, introducing some low end. And also a hi-hat. You can hear that offbeat hi-hat, classic 4 on the floor, backbeat, housey type of pattern. What's that? Cool. And then for transitioning, and this is kind of the interesting part. So a lot of people ask about, as far as like live performances go, one of the hardest parts, and I agree with this too, I think one of the hardest parts is managing energy and being able to transition between stuff. But I think in order to transition well or be able to transition properly, that's where understanding the energy really helps. So for example, in this scene over here that I have that says 2 bars, and that's got the transition thing going on, I have a transition clip that isn't more active than my previous drum clip, but instead it's actually pare it down a little bit. So here's the drum clip that I just played that was active. So it's got the kick, it's got the clap and the offbeat hi-hat, but my transition clip is just kick and hat. What does this do? It kind of takes us from this higher level of energy and just makes us dip a tiny bit in energy by taking away the clap, so that when the drop comes in, or the drop, I shy away from that term. When the chorus comes in, it's a lot more effective. So for example, here's the pre-chorus. And let's transition right now. Transition. Right, so you've got a little bit of a cutout, and then you're bringing everything back in. So it's like energy level comes slight dip, and then boop, there you go. And because of the way that I designed this, I didn't create an additional track, but what I might have done for transitions is create an additional audio track and be able to put on some kinds of effects on it. So it could be like a noise sweep or some kind of white noise thing that I would manually filter. That's something that you could also do to prep that and be able to do that. Or I might set up some kind of effects processing chain where maybe I can filter the drums and have them come all the way back in the drop, maybe taking out the low end, and then when the drop comes, you bring all the low end in. So that's another consideration to have, to like being able to transition between different parts and have different levels of energy. And even between this first chorus, so chorus 1 that you see over here in my live set, and chorus 2, they also do have different levels of energy too. And that's through adding on different types of elements, right? So let's go ahead and stop all of the clips. I'm just going to stop all of these and see what's happening between certain clips. And in this case, I do want to highlight the melody part, the mallet thing that's going on. And maybe Max can add on a little bit of sax if we need more saxophone if the melody is currently unsatisfactory. So here is the original melody. In the first chorus, lots of space. What happens in the second chorus? So octave higher. That's actually a very, and I just paused everything, but that's actually one pretty easy way to also kind of think about managing energy, I find. Sometimes all you need is something playing at a higher octave, because generally a lot of higher frequencies will tend to be perceived as a bit more energetic. That's kind of why, like, when you filter something out and you bring it back in, a bigger frequency spectrum is oftentimes more energetic than, say, something that's super limited. So that's just something I think about as well. The exact octave that things are in, if this were an octave lower, it probably wouldn't be as effective, just because it would be at the exact same octave as the original mallet clip. So just something to consider. And on that note, even adding in different kinds of layers, say things like arpeggiators or things that are a little bit more frequent in their rhythmic divisions, could also help a lot too. In that last chorus that I performed, I don't even know if anyone noticed this, but in the very last chorus that I performed, yes, I did launch the entire scene that I designated as chorus 2, but I also brought in an arpeggiator clip that originally was not in the same scene, but that I wanted to introduce in. So let's do this again. Chorus 2. Arpeggiator clip is here. So in the end, chorus 2, the last time it comes in, it ends up being like chorus 3, because you've got this additional part to it as well. So that's like, that's an important feature too. And ooh, I see that we are at the halftime mark, so I'm going to pop over into the chat and also drink some water. Cool. So let's see, where did we leave off? Rio, is Ableton push setting different between Novation Launchpad in Ableton? In Live, you mean? So yes, Live is the software, Ableton is the company. Are the push settings different? Yes, absolutely, because it's a totally different controller. The main thing that is similar is that you've got an 8x8 grid of pads, But as far as manipulating these things goes, it's a different controller. So some of the controls that you have, say, that are available on Push wouldn't be available on the Launchpad, and vice versa. Also because the Launchpad comes in several different kinds of versions, so it really depends on what version you have. The Mini will be different from the X, which will be different from the Pro. So all of these are different things to consider as well. Enigmatic Onion. When I start composing, I start on piano by playing some notes, referring to my chord progression wheel, then add bass, vocals, and lastly, drums. What do you think about the process and how do you do it? That's an excellent process. Thank you for explaining that so clearly. It always helps a lot when when we hear things that are clear, just so that I don't misinterpret anything. But absolutely, that's a really great way to work on stuff. And I think if you've liked that workflow, stick to it if it's been effective for you. I pretty much do a similar thing too, except for me, I think I'm at a point where I try to make the distinction very clear as to what is the point of inspiration or why I'm starting to write. Am I starting to write a piece because it's a part of my daily exercises? Because here's something that I've shared before too, but I produce every day. Like I make a little tiny something every day, even if it's for like 5 minutes, just to get that muscle exercising. Like you got to do it. So am I just doing it for the exercise, or have I actually thought of maybe some kind of melodic idea that I want to turn into a sound with chords? A song with chords, not a sound. And if it's the latter, so if it's me thinking of a melodic idea and chords behind it, then that's a little bit more of my songwriting side, which I still work a lot with. I compartmentalize a lot of things, but that's, one thing that I love returning to. I'm a songwriter, right? So I think about chords and I think about a melody on top of it. Oftentimes, for my process for songwriting, the melody and the lyrics come together. And I know it's very different for people, and for some people, they want to think of them separately. But for a lot of my songs, for example, the songs that you hear in the intros and the outros of 343 TV, those are more often than not composed of like melodies and lyrics simultaneously. So I get the top line at the same time, and then I'll have the chords underneath that. But actually, speaking of intro and outro songs, the song that you're hearing in today's intro and outro for this stream just got released yesterday. And it is a remix of a tune by a very dear friend of mine, Alex Rapp. She's an amazing producer who's currently based in Berlin, and I know she's also kind of a part of the 343 community. But I remixed one of her songs off of her EP that was released earlier this year. It's liquid drum and bassy kind of feel to it. The original track was a little bit like shoegaze guitar ballad vibes to it, but now it's a drum and bass tune. So flipped it a little bit, but please listen to it. It's available everywhere on the greater internet. Spotify, YouTube, Instagram for like, the preview of it. Please also follow Alex on all platforms. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll be able to see more info about her. She's amazing. Her songs are amazing. It was like I was so scared remixing the track. But it was originally done in a producer challenge that we did for our group of producer friends. We kind of had like a producer friend group that would get together on the weekends and do like weird challenges just to exercise our muscles. Like I said, the production muscle exercising. So we would do like 2-hour challenges. So I made most of the remix in that 2 hours, which was a little crazy also. I was very stressed, but I'm so glad that she liked it. Yay. So that's out. Please listen to it. So that was me speaking about the process stuff. So going back to Enigmatic Onion's question, if I'm just doing a little bit of exercise though, and if I don't have a clear idea for some kind of song structure, then I might start with drums first, or I might start with bass first, or I might even start with like weird sound effects and soundscapes first. Sometimes I get inspired by those as well. So I think it's really up to you, whatever your process is for preparing productions or performances, sometimes both. That's a great question. Thank you for that. Samuel, is it normal I don't hear nuances of mics that other people comment about, like warmth or clarity? Samuel, that's a great question. And I think perhaps other people in the chat can also speak to this too, especially if they've recorded vocals too. But it's really a way of it's ear training. I think we talk about ear training, or you often hear the term ear training talked about a lot in the context of harmony and theory. But truth be told, for producers, there is like producer ear training. I don't know if anyone else has heard of this, but golden ears was a big thing. I did the golden ears program as a part of my degree when I did that. We did like lots of golden ear exercises. But for example, where a jazz musician or a pianist might want to be able to tell like, hey, that's a C major chord, or that's like a minor seventh chord, or some kind of variation of that. And producers, we should still be able to hear it too. On our side, it's like, okay, instead of a chord necessarily, it's like I hear a resonance at 3 kilohertz, or this mic has a little bit more natural warmth or like mid-ranginess around like 200 hertz and stuff like that, or this mic is very bright and there's a lot of sibilance at like in the 7 or 8K ranges. That's something that's developed over time. It's training your ear to listen to that, right? And I think it also helps being able to physically test out the mics themselves. So I'm not sure how you're listening to the mics and making the comparison. A lot of the times when we do listen to YouTube audio, there still is a compromise with like how well the way that mics pick up sounds are reflected. But yeah, it's I think it's totally normal to not be able to hear that off the bat. But after a while, when you practice that listening muscle, you will absolutely be able to hear it. Pretty sure. At least that's how it was for me and a lot of my peers. I remember when I did the golden ears thing, I think in the first week, everyone was just like, we're never going to be able to do this. like, what are you asking us to do? Like, here, listen to pick noise at 1K, blasted at, like, boosted at 12 dB. That's essentially what a lot of it is. But by the end, through a lot of consistent practice and a lot of hard work, we were able to listen to different things. So that's a cool thing. Ew, John, hi, nice to see you. Sam, or thine? I think you mean thinness, but I think you wrote thines. So thinness, yeah, thinness. So oftentimes when something is thin, it might mean, very generally, it could mean that it's been high passed too much. So right now, if I were to high pass my vocals, let's see if I can do it from Push. Otherwise, I'll just do it directly from Live if Push is misbehaving. But no, we got it. Okay, cool. So if I were to high pass my vocals, this is thin. Like, wow, Claire, your voice sounds so thin. This is thin. So maybe sometimes if something's been high passed too much, you might get a thin sound. Let's see. Not common ghost notes. Yeah, don't usually hear nuances until someone points that out. Sorry, I'm not super sure what you mean actually, or if that was responding to maybe someone else's comment, perhaps, or my comment. I'm not sure. But it is Abe. Abe 2K, everyone. Yay, Abe. Thank you so much for popping by, Abe. Everyone, please tune into Abe's show. He's also on 343 TV. We stream every day at 1 p.m. And Abe is like an amazing presenter. He has a wonderful setup too. I've learnt many things from Abe, including his recent live performance experience that he shared at our most recent Ableton user group. So as a reminder, everyone, 343 Labs also hosts the New York Ableton user group. So if you want to join us, you can always head over to 343labs.com/events to be notified of the next user group. I think the next one that we have is next week, because we have it in the second week of the month usually. And I think it's next Thursday. So if you want to join us for that, I will be hosting it as well. And yeah, join us for that. It's fun. We just hang out and we talk about things related to Ableton products like Live and Push. And it's called the Ableton user group because it's for users with Ableton products, not because we think that the name of Live is Ableton. No, it's not. It's not. Let's see. Enigmatic Onion. I also have a theme to every song I make. Start by naming the song. Yeah, that's really great. I think that's a great approach as well. I love doing that too. For me, I've found that works really well when I'm, and maybe this is different for you, Enigmatic Onion, but I find that works really well when I'm co-writing with people, when I'm co-producing with people. Oftentimes we think about, not necessarily a word theme, but we think about like an overall vibe or a mood that we're going for. So for example, if we're writing together, if we're producing together, like I recently produced with one of my friends, we were going for this idea of like post-apocalyptic sounds. So we ended up doing this like dubsteppy kind of thing with a lot of growls and very resonant kinds of vocals that were purposely resonant so that they could, echo out a little bit more, get some interesting frequencies. So yeah, like composing and producing around the idea of a theme, I think that's a wonderful thing to do. And being able to have that influence things like sampling and tempo, that's also a really great approach too. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks. Rio, do you take classic piano before starting to learn to produce? So I'm a classically trained pianist. I spent most of my childhood doing it for many years. And a classically trained flute player also. So piano and flute are my loves, which I still go to. And I still write and produce a lot with those as well, and perform as well. If anyone's seen my live performance, I often have some kind of track that's set up to specifically do that. And maybe I'll just do a quick revisit of things that I've spoken before in previous streams about like live input too. So let's pretend that I'm Max Wild and that I want to be able to put in some kinds of live sounds into live at the moment. So what I can do from live to prep my live setup for this, let's go ahead and create a new audio track. And let's apply some of the things that I already mentioned earlier on in today's stream to set us up better and to help us prepare. So after I create this new audio track, the first thing I'll probably do is to rename it. So let's call it the sax. I was almost going to call it Max, but maybe I should call it Max. Let's call it Max Sax or Max Sax. Max Sax. Okay, cool. So let's right click also and let's recolor it this like lightish green. So like I mentioned, I usually associate lightish green with this. So cool. So any kinds of live input I usually associate with lightish green. If I hold down the name of the button of the track on push, I'm able to arm that automatically. So I've now got this input armed, and if I turn the monitoring to auto, all of this I did go through in a previous stream, but just a quick reminder for those of us who might be new, I can monitor over here. So let me turn this off. So now I'm here. You can hear that I am softer, and that's because I don't have any EQ or I don't have any compression specifically on my voice yet, but I think I might also want to put in a little bit of EQ. So let's go ahead and put an EQ and a compressor on it. So what I'm going to do is just find the EQ and compressor over here. Let's see. And now you'll notice I also have to like get up like right close on my mic for you to be able to hear me properly. So let's do EQ8. And so now do y'all see that rumbly low end? All that activity over there. We don't want that. So usually what I tend to do, especially for live performances, is that I am quite aggressive with this. I usually high pass filter until about 150 hertz. And then let's do some compression. So let's bring the threshold of this compressor down until where most of the signal is coming in, which appears to be around -30. So great. Now we are set up to be able to have live input in. So if I had a sax, unfortunately I do not because I'm not Max, but if I did, then I would be able to play things and I'd be able to hear them directly passing through in live. So yeah, let's see. Yay from Abe. Yay, cool, great class. Nice. Glad to hear that stuff. Rio is good music producer, could play all instruments. I don't think that you have to play instruments to be a good music producer. I absolutely do not think so. I think what's most important is that you are you're trying to figure out the way to be true to your own sound. This is a very deep question, but I'll answer it as best as I can within like the last bit of the stream that I can. Absolutely not. I don't think good music producers can play all instruments. I think most producers, in fact, probably might only like use one. I mean, play one instrument. Some people don't even play any instrument. They play the laptop, which is totally legit. And I think being able to use whatever tools you have to make the best music that you can, that's what makes a good producer. Yeah. So I think that's it. I hope that answered the question. It's a very like deep question that I feel I will always be answering no matter how many times I get asked it. So let's go ahead and switch back to my normal monitoring stuff also. Here we go. Yay, we're back. I've got a little bit more aggressive compression on this one, so that's why. Samuel, have you heard about the MXL 440 mic? Yes, I have. I'm not sure what about it you want to ask, though, so I'm just directly answering your question. Yeah, I have heard of the MXL. Abe, only Prince could play all instruments. That is correct. I love Prince very dearly. And I think that it's so wonderful to like hear all these stories about him. If you hear Susan Rogers, who was his engineer, talk about him and his workflow, it's just so inspiring to hear. And yeah, if this is maybe an Ableton company related sort of thing, but Ableton usually hosts this conference that's called Loop, and Susan Rogers did a wonderful presentation about Prince a couple years ago at Loop. I think it was 2017. I was fortunate enough to have been there in person when she did it, and I was just like, it was just so amazing. I was so inspired by her. And yeah, she like shares the most wonderful things about working with him, the challenges, of course, but also like the very exciting creative things that he used to be able to do, like Abe said, play all the instruments and be able to lay things down like in a really wonderful, clear, creatively inspired way. And I think that's maybe something that we all kind of go for. TWD, hi. For the longest time, I only played the Game Boy. It's that's a thing too. I mean, you can do chiptune music now, which is very popular as well. So yeah. That sorts of things. I can play the laptop and the computer too. I think most of us can. Yeah, Abe, cool. Samuel, is it good? I mean, I haven't tried it, so I've heard many things about it, which make it seem to be good. I would say if you are asking me that, you could also ask the same thing to Google. And people oftentimes, throw me under the bus for this, but I'm a big fan of figuring things out on your own and learning things. I think it's great to have an educator and a teacher that you work with to figure out the things that you can't already figure out. But if it's a matter of you looking something up and Googling stuff, I say go for it. You'll probably be able to find much better responses from your own research than only relying on one source of information. So I would say, let me ask you, Samuel, is it good? Let me know. But yeah, thanks everyone for the questions. Is it good? Yeah, is it good? Let me know. Let me know if you think it's good after doing some research, because I haven't tried it. I've only done research on my own too. So everyone, let's head back over here into the live set, and let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of other things that I've done to make sure that this is optimized. And actually, I haven't optimized it yet. Why? That's because I'm kind of streaming to everyone now, but generally, whenever I do live performance sets, I try to be able to hide things like the browser, so maximizing a lot of space. And that's something that you can do on the left-hand side of live. You can show and hide the browser. You can also show and hide info view, which is this lower left-hand box. I like to have it open a lot when I'm teaching and when I'm producing, just because info view shows you a lot of useful information about different features that you're hovering over in live. But that said, you do need to be hovering over something, like your mouse needs to be over it to have information about it show up in info view. And in a live performance setting, I'm really not touching my computer. So I usually tend to close that up too. So I close up info view. I also close up the browser. Goodness, I forgot about that for a second. So I close all of those things up. And something that I do as well, depending on exactly what I'm working with, is adjust my zoom display. So if you head over here to the look or feel tab of live, you can change how much of something is zoomed in or zoomed out. So if I'm in a situation where, yes, I do need to be able to kind of see more things than I usually need to, I would end up zooming in a little bit more. But for now, I think my default, what I had set this to just now is I think 100 maybe? That was the default. I usually have it at 100 whenever I'm streaming or whenever I share things with people. But maybe if I need to see something bigger, I might increase the zoom, or I might decrease the zoom also, depending on what exactly I'm doing or how many tracks I have, what my real estate is. But essentially, what I'm trying to do in a live setting is make sure that nothing that I don't need is taking up space. So I just want to be able to see whatever I need. And if that means closing up different windows, sometimes I might even close up the device view or detail view at the bottom if I don't need it. But if I need it, sometimes I do. If I'm doing like specific sample-based things like in audio clips, then I would need that. But if I don't need it, then I will also probably go ahead and close it up. So just little things like managing different facets of your live sets as well. Could be something too. Leo, hi, greetings, just arrived. Can you play your project? I played it at the beginning, so if you want to, you can always rewind back to the beginning. And that's the great part about all of these streams too, everyone. So we do record the streams and they are available for replay. So Leo, feel free to zoom back and after at the beginning, if you've listened to it, you can feel free to join us back again too. Tyra, do you have any type of plugin on your mic that's putting out that crisp radio host sound? It's really just EQ and compression. So even thinking back to what I did over here on my Max sax track, let's pretend that it's not Max sax, but maybe it's like Claire voice instead. So let's switch back over there. And let's edit a couple of these settings. Truly, a lot of it is compression though. So one thing that I am doing is, of course, having some kind of high pass filter that will take out the low end. For me personally, this is something I noticed over time as well, but I have a voice that's pretty resonant around 3K. So I would usually find something around 3K and I just like dip that down slightly. And then I would apply compression. So usually I would lower the threshold up until around where my voice is coming in. And I might also up the ratio. The ratio is how much compression is without going super techie and going like a super deep dive into ratio and all of these things. I'm also going to go ahead and just readjust my window because I noticed that it was a little weird hanging out. Okay, cool. Let me just see. There we go. Okay, cool. We're able to see a couple of things a little better now. Oh no, it's still a little bit cut off. 1 second, everyone. I think this happened just now when I was doing the zoom changes and stuff like that. Great. So here we are. We're back here. So yeah, we've got the compression stuff. Threshold is down. Let's up the ratio a little bit, and maybe that's going to get us a little closer to the radio voice. So I believe on my original track, I think on the monitor track, I did have it around like 3 as a ratio. So this is pretty good. You've got that kind of radio voice. It's something to be aware of though, is that the more you compress something, generally the more kind of background noisy thing that you get. So now you hear a lot of my ambient noise in my home. So you can hear that, which you wouldn't necessarily get, but that's a great question. Thanks for your question, Tyra. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You know what? I'm going to stick to my Max sax track now. Rio, I admire producers when they start to learn to produce from piano first, because understand music theory could apply to yeah, I think so. I mean, I think like, it's regardless of whatever you do, whatever order you do it in, I think production and theory, especially if you're a producer, will always complement each other. So the more you don't have to know theory, by theory we always mean like traditional Western theory, like, right? We don't mean things like in different traditions, but Western music theory, it usually helps you. So and actually I would say that if anything about theory, the more you know about different cultures and different traditions of theory, I think the more that helps, I think. For example, when I was doing a lot of my research, and I do this now also just because apart from doing like the music tech stuff, I'm also an ethnomusicologist. So my specialization is in dance music cultures. Being able to understand different music cultures and the way that people theorize in them, for lack of a better word, also shows you a lot about how that particular culture has developed popular music up until today. So for example, if anyone knows the Karnataka or the Hindustani traditions of Indian music, and if you listen to the way music today sounds in the Indian subcontinent, you'll get a lot of insight into what is actually happening compositionally and production-wise. So that's always cool to think about. And even thinking about, in different traditions where they have things like half of half steps, so like quarter tones, right? Being able to hear inflections in traditions that have those, studying, Arabic maqams and other kinds of things. Those will only enrich you, and they won't, I don't think, at least so far, I've never had it be detrimental to me. It's only ever helped me. So that was a long-winded way of saying theory is cool. Let's see. Samuel, the MXL has a lot of bass in your opinion. That's great. So now you've developed your own opinion on it. That's wonderful. Great. Not common. How would you go about removing ambient noise? I have a ton of background noise. Gate feels a little heavy-handed. That's a great point. I would honestly say the best way is, if you think about the saying, prevention is better than cure, I would say try to find a quiet environment. So generally, for example, when I'm recording my vocals, I do think at the moment, if I take a listen through my headphones, most of my ambient noise is coming from my laptop. Yeah. So that's why for a lot of the time when I do record stuff, I make sure that my laptop fan is not on. Right now my fan's going because I'm streaming and I'm talking with y'all and doing all of these things at once. So I make sure that, especially actually for live performance, this is pretty important too. When I'm doing like when I'm listening and when I'm setting these things up, I'm very attuned to like how far I am from my laptop. So I usually try to be as far away as possible without being completely out of reach in a physical sense. So that's the first step. And then I think the second step, you can use a gate to help, depending on the settings and the amount of background noise you have. It could, your mileage may vary, but let's even try putting a gate on here on max sax. Let's put a gate here. So let's grab a gate from the browser and put it in front of the EQ. Take a second to do that. Great. So now let's lower the threshold to a good place. And yeah, you can see that a gate, which does what it's meant to do, takes out any sound that is below a certain loudness. So now I'm coming in. And you can hear my voice, but you can also, while I'm speaking, you can still hear a little bit of the ambient stuff. But actually, if I'm having a lot of background noise in this setup, I might have done this. You can also adjust things like the attack of the gate. So how fast it takes for the gate to open after you've reached that threshold. And generally I go for a fairly fast attack, but I might increase the hold a little bit longer and maybe a little bit of a longer release too. So yeah, there's different settings that you can adjust to your gate to make it sound a little bit more natural. So now it actually sounds pretty all right. And if I were in a live performance situation, I might leave it as such. But yeah, for now, let's turn that off. And thank you so much to everyone who's been tuning in. We are at the end of the stream, so really appreciate everyone hanging out for this 101 on how to set up your live performance and different things to consider in the preparation stages. Really appreciate everyone's wonderful comments as well and questions. This was very cool. And yeah, if you do want to enter the giveaway, the link is in the chat above, so please do. We want you to win. We want you to be aware of any giveaways that we have, including ones that we release on our streams. And also, I wanted to add that next week I will have a special guest on my show. So please tune in for that as well. We're going to be talking about some performance stuff and production stuff. You'll have to stay tuned to find out who the guest is, or maybe the guest might leak it out on social media, depending on what the guest does. But we will have a guest next week on the show who will speak to us about their processes for making content and making music, which they are amazing at. And yeah, please look forward to that. Please stay tuned. Tomorrow, we also still have programming as we do for the rest of the week. So please also tune in for the rest of the 343 programs. Otherwise, it was great to see everyone again. As a last note, we will have TAETRO Talks tomorrow. And I also have a new single out. So please listen to that too. You can find the Familiar remix by dolltr of Alex Rap, my friend, on all platforms now. So please enjoy that. And you can also listen to it in the outro. So here we go. Thanks again, everyone, and see you next week. Bye.
Have we met before? I know that it's cliche, but I feel like if I lay in your arms, I'd fit exactly where I belong. I'd fit exactly where I